My brother Michael and I used to be everything to each other. We shared secrets like trading cards, whispered plans under blanket forts, and defended each other against our parents' rules. Michael was 2 years older, but he never made me feel small or stupid. When other kids picked on me at school, he would walk me home and tell me stories to make me forget their cruel words. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, where the road curved and the old oak tree stretched its branches over the sidewalk. Michael and I climbed that tree every summer, racing to see who could reach the highest branch first. He always won, but he would wait for me at the top, grinning and pointing out the whole neighborhood spread below us. I trusted him completely. When Mom and Dad fought late at night, we would sneak into each other's rooms and plan our escape to somewhere far away. Michael promised he would always protect me, no matter what happened. I believed him with my whole heart. That was before everything changed. Before I learned that the person you trust most can become the one who hurts you deepest. The jealousy started small, like a tiny crack in a perfect window. At first, I didn't notice it. Michael still helped me with homework and shared his candy bars. But something shifted when I made the honor roll for the third time in a row. Dad hung my report card on the refrigerator, right next to Michael's B- grades. "Victoria's really something special," Dad said at dinner, ruffling my hair. "Top of her class again." Michael smiled and congratulated me, but his eyes looked different. Cold, almost. Like he was staring at a stranger instead of his little sister. The crack grew wider when I won the science fair. My project on renewable energy beat out all the 8th graders, including Michael's friends. The local newspaper wanted to take my picture and write an article about the young genius from Maple Street. Michael helped me practice my speech that night, but his encouragement felt forced. His smile never reached his eyes anymore. When I asked if something was wrong, he just said he was tired from soccer practice. I should have seen the warning signs. I should have noticed how he stopped sharing secrets with me, how he started hanging out with different kids at school. The distance between us grew like weeds in an abandoned garden. Michael began making small comments that stung like paper cuts. "Must be nice being the favorite," he would mutter when Mom praised my test scores. Or, "Some people get all the luck," when teachers chose me for special projects. I tried to talk to him about it, but he would just shrug and change the subject. He stopped waiting for me after school. He stopped inviting me to hang out with his friends. Our shared language of inside jokes and silly nicknames faded into awkward silence. Mom noticed the change too. "You boys need to stick together," she said one evening, not knowing that we were already falling apart. "Family is all you really have in this world." I wanted to fix things between us, but I didn't know how. I tried giving him space, thinking maybe he just needed time to adjust to me getting more attention. I tried including him in conversations about my achievements, asking for his advice and opinions. Nothing worked. The brother who once promised to protect me was becoming a stranger. Still, I never imagined he would hurt me. Even when the jealousy poisoned our relationship, I never thought he could be dangerous. I was so wrong. It happened on a Tuesday in October. The leaves were turning gold and red, carpeting our yard in autumn colors. I was hurrying home from school, excited to tell Michael about my acceptance into the advanced math program. Maybe this good news would help us reconnect. The front steps of our house were covered in wet leaves. I had climbed those steps thousands of times without thinking. But as I reached for the railing, my foot hit something slippery. I felt myself falling backward, my arms reaching out desperately for something to grab. The world spun around me. I saw the gray sky, the oak tree's branches, and then the concrete sidewalk rushing up to meet me. My head hit the pavement with a sound like a watermelon dropping. Pain exploded through my skull. My vision went white, then black around the edges. I could taste blood in my mouth and feel something warm trickling down my neck. Every breath hurt like broken glass in my chest. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard footsteps running toward me. Someone was calling my name, but the voice sounded far away and scared. When I managed to open my eyes, Michael's face was hovering above me. But something was terribly wrong with his expression. Instead of worry or panic, I saw guilt written across his features like words on a page. His eyes were wide with fear, but not the kind of fear you have when someone you love gets hurt. It was the fear of getting caught. His hands shook as he knelt beside me, and he kept glancing back at the house like he was expecting someone to appear. Victoria. Oh no, are you okay? His words sounded right, but his voice was wrong. Too high, too careful, like he was reading lines from a script. I tried to speak, but only a groan came out. My head felt like it was splitting open. When I tried to sit up, the world tilted sideways and nausea rolled through my stomach. Don't move, Michael said quickly. I'll get Mom and Dad. But he didn't run toward the house immediately. Instead, he looked down at me with that strange expression again. Guilty. Nervous. Almost disappointed? As the pain pounded through my head, one thought kept circling through my mind like a broken record. Why did Michael look like he had done something wrong? The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and worried paramedics. Mom rode with me to the hospital, holding my hand and crying. Dad followed in his car with Michael, who sat quietly in the passenger seat. At the emergency room, doctors ran tests and asked questions. I had a concussion, 3 bruised ribs, and a sprained wrist. The doctor said I was lucky. The fall could have been much worse. What happened exactly? The nurse asked while checking my pupils with a small flashlight. I started to answer, but Michael spoke first. She slipped on wet leaves. The steps get really slippery when it rains. It hadn't rained that day. The leaves were dry when I left for school that morning. But my head hurt too much to correct him, and everyone seemed relieved to have a simple explanation. Michael visited me in the hospital room, bringing my favorite magazines and a get-well card he claimed to have made himself. He seemed like the caring big brother again, asking if I needed anything and promising to help me catch up on schoolwork. But I couldn't shake the memory of his face right after the fall. That look of guilt and fear. Something about his story didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Recovery was slow and frustrating. I missed 2 weeks of school and had to drop out of several activities. The headaches lasted for months, making it hard to concentrate on reading or homework. My grades slipped for the first time in my life. Michael was surprisingly helpful during those first few weeks. He brought me soup when I felt sick and read to me when my eyes hurt too much to focus on books. Our parents praised him for being such a good brother. See how he's taking care of his sister? Mom said to Dad one evening, thinking I was asleep. That's what family is about. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I would catch Michael staring at me with that same strange expression from the day I fell. When our eyes met, he would quickly look away or force a smile. I started paying closer attention to details I had missed before. Like how Michael always seemed to know exactly when I would be coming home from school. How he had been the first person to reach me after the fall, even though he was supposed to be inside doing homework. Little things began to bother me. Why hadn't he called for help immediately? Why did he make up that story about rain? And why did he look so relieved when the doctor said my injuries weren't worse? 3 weeks after the accident, I found the first real clue. I was looking for my math textbook in the garage when I saw something that made my blood freeze. Hidden behind Dad's toolbox was a small bottle of cooking oil with my name written on a piece of tape. My hands shook as I picked it up. The bottle was nearly empty, and oil residue coated the inside. I held it up to the light, trying to understand what I was seeing. Why would Michael have a bottle of oil with my name on it? Why would he hide it in the garage? A horrible thought began forming in my mind, but I pushed it away. This had to be some innocent explanation. Maybe he was planning to cook something special for my recovery? Maybe the tape was old and meaningless? But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made me feel sick. I put the bottle back exactly where I found it and walked back into the house on unsteady legs. Michael was in the kitchen making a snack, humming quietly to himself. "How are you feeling?" he asked, looking up with a concerned expression. I studied his face carefully. "Better," I lied. "Much better." I couldn't stop thinking about the oil bottle. Every time I looked at Michael, I wondered what he was really thinking behind those concerned smiles. I started testing him with small questions about the day I fell. "Do you remember what the weather was like?" I asked casually one evening while we watched TV. "Rainy," he said immediately. "That's why the steps were so slippery." Actually, I think it was sunny that day, I said, watching his reaction. Michael's jaw tightened for just a second before he shrugged. I don't really remember. It was pretty traumatic, you know? Seeing you hurt like that. But I remembered now. It had been a beautiful, clear day. The kind of day when wet leaves would dry out completely by afternoon. I began paying attention to everything Michael did. How he always seemed to be watching me. How he volunteered to walk me to school now, claiming he wanted to make sure I was safe. How he insisted on carrying my backpack, even though the doctor said I was strong enough to manage it myself. It felt like he was keeping track of my recovery, measuring my progress. But why? The horrible truth was growing stronger in my mind, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. For weeks after the fall, I decided to investigate the front steps. I waited until everyone was at work and school, then examined every inch of the concrete stairs where I had slipped. There were no cracks or uneven spots that could have caused me to fall. The steps were solid and well-maintained. But when I looked closer at the third step from the top, I found something that made my heart race. Faint stains marked the concrete, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. Oil stains. Someone had poured oil on the step where I always placed my right foot when climbing the stairs. The stains had been scrubbed, but not completely cleaned away. They formed a small, deliberate puddle right where my foot would naturally land. I sat down heavily on the bottom step, my head spinning with more than just leftover concussion symptoms. This wasn't an accident. Someone had made those steps slippery on purpose. Someone had wanted me to fall. And the only person who knew my exact routine, who knew which step I used, who had access to cooking oil and opportunity to prepare this trap, was Michael. My own brother had tried to hurt me. Maybe even tried to kill me. The next few days passed in a haze of disbelief and growing anger. I watched Michael carefully, looking for any sign that he knew I suspected him. But he played his part perfectly, the concerned older brother, helpful and protective. "You seem upset lately," he said one morning over breakfast. "Are you having headaches again?" I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab his shoulders and demand to know why he had betrayed me. Instead, I forced myself to stay calm. "Just thinking about getting back to normal," I said quietly. "That's good," Michael nodded. "I worry about you sometimes. You've been through so much." The fake concern in his voice made me sick. How could he sit there and pretend to care while knowing what he had done? How could he comfort me when he was the reason I needed comforting? That night, I made a decision. I needed proof before I could confront him or tell our parents. Adults would want evidence, not just suspicions. And I needed to understand why my brother wanted to hurt me. I started planning my investigation like a detective story. I would watch, listen, and gather evidence until I had enough to expose the truth. My investigation began with Michael's room. While he was at soccer practice, I searched through his belongings carefully, making sure to leave everything exactly as I found it. In his desk drawer, underneath old homework assignments and candy wrappers, I found a notebook I had never seen before. The cover was plain black, and when I opened it, my blood turned to ice. Page after page contained detailed observations about me. My schedule, my habits, my fears. Michael had been watching me like a scientist studying a lab rat. Victoria leaves school at 3:15 every Tuesday for math tutoring, read one entry. Takes the same route home every day, always uses the third step with her right foot. Another page showed a rough map of our house and yard, with notes about where Mom and Dad would be at different times of day. He had planned everything. But the worst part was the last entry, dated the day before my fall. "She's getting too much attention. Everyone thinks she's so perfect. Tomorrow I'll show them she's not invincible." My hands shook as I read those words over and over. This wasn't just jealousy or an accident that went too far. Michael had planned to hurt me because he was tired of me succeeding. I photographed the pages with my phone, then carefully put the notebook back where I found it. That evening at dinner, I sat across from Michael and tried to act normal while my world crumbled around me. He passed me the salt and asked about my day like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't written about destroying me in his secret notebook. "How was soccer practice?" I managed to ask. "Good," he said, cutting his chicken into precise pieces. "Coach says I might make varsity next year if I keep improving." That's great, I said, though the words felt like sand in my mouth. Mom and Dad chatted about their work days, completely unaware that their son had tried to seriously injure their daughter. They saw Michael's helpful behavior and praised him for being such a caring brother. If only they knew the truth. After dinner, I excused myself and went to my room. I stared at the photos on my phone, reading Michael's words again and again. The evidence was clear, but my heart still couldn't fully accept it. This was my brother. The same person who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me build snow forts. How could someone I loved so much want to hurt me? The betrayal cut deeper than any physical injury. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's guilty face hovering over me on the sidewalk. I replayed our childhood memories, searching for signs I had missed. Had he always been capable of this kind of cruelty? I remembered times when Michael seemed frustrated with the attention I received. Birthday parties where guests praised my drawings. Family dinners where relatives asked about my good grades. School events where teachers introduced me as the smart one. Maybe the jealousy had been building for years, hiding beneath his protective big brother act. Maybe I had been too trusting to see the resentment growing in his heart. But understanding his motives didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. If anything, it made everything worse. He hadn't hurt me in a moment of anger or by accident. He had planned it carefully, deliberately, coldly. The brother I thought I knew was a lie. The real Michael was someone who could look me in the eye and pretend to care while plotting my downfall. I spent the long, dark hours planning what to do next. Telling our parents seemed obvious, but Michael would just deny everything. He would claim the notebook was fiction or a joke. Without witnesses to the actual crime, it would be his word against mine. The next morning, I made a crucial decision. Before exposing Michael, I needed to understand the full extent of his deception. Was the fall an isolated incident, or had he done other things to hurt me? I started reviewing recent events with new suspicion. Last month, I had gotten food poisoning the night before a big presentation. Michael had made my lunch that day, insisting he wanted to help me prepare. 2 months ago, my science project had been mysteriously damaged just days before the fair. I had blamed bad luck, but Michael had been the only family member who knew where I kept it. 3 months ago, I had fallen down the basement stairs and twisted my ankle. Michael had been home that day too, and he was the one who found me lying at the bottom. A pattern was emerging, and it terrified me. This wasn't just about one moment of jealousy. Michael had been sabotaging me for months, maybe longer. Each incident seemed like an accident, but together they painted a horrifying picture. My brother wasn't just jealous of my success. He was actively trying to destroy it, one accident at a time. I felt like I was living with a stranger who wore my brother's face. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone in my family. If I was wrong about Michael, I would destroy our relationship forever. If I was right, he might try to hurt me again before I could stop him. Instead, I decided to confide in my best friend Jennifer. She had always been a good listener, and she knew Michael well enough to help me think through the situation. That's horrible, Jennifer whispered when I showed her the photos of Michael's notebook during lunch at school. You have to tell your parents. But what if they don't believe me? I said. What if Michael convinces them I'm making it all up? Jennifer studied the evidence carefully. This is pretty convincing. But maybe you should try to get him to confess first? Like, record him admitting what he did. That was a smart idea. If I could get Michael to tell the truth, I would have proof that no one could argue with. How do I do that without making him suspicious? I asked. Act like you're ready to forgive him, Jennifer suggested. Tell him you know what happened, but you understand why he did it. Make him feel safe enough to be honest. It was a risky plan, but it might be my only chance to get the truth. That evening, I asked Michael if he wanted to take a walk around the neighborhood. Just the two of us, like we used to do when we were younger. He seemed surprised but agreed. We walked in silence for a while, past the familiar houses and under the streetlights that were just beginning to flicker on. Michael, I said carefully when we reached the old oak tree where we used to climb. I know what really happened when I fell. He stopped walking and turned to face me. In the dim light, I could see his face go pale. What do you mean? He asked, but his voice battered. I'm calculating, trying to decide whether to keep lying or tell the truth. Finally, his shoulders sagged in defeat. How long have you known? My heart broke a little more, even though I had been expecting this confession. Some small part of me had still hoped I was wrong. Does it matter? I asked quietly. Michael began talking like a dam had burst inside him. All the resentment and jealousy poured out in a flood of bitter words. Do you know what it's like being your brother? He said, his voice rising with emotion. Everything you touch turns to gold. Every teacher loves you. Mom and Dad act like you're some kind of miracle child. I listened in shocked silence as he continued. I work twice as hard as you do, but nobody notices. I try my best at everything, but it's never good enough. There's always Victoria and her perfect grades, Victoria and her special projects, Victoria and her bright future. So you decided to hurt me? I asked, my own anger finally breaking through. I didn't mean for you to get hurt that badly, he said quickly. I just wanted you to miss the math program interview. I wanted something to go wrong for you for once. His explanation made everything worse. He had been willing to cause me serious injury just to make me miss an opportunity. What if I had hit my head harder? What if I had broken my neck? You could have killed me, I whispered. Michael looked away. But I didn't. And I felt terrible about it afterward. I really did. His guilt felt meaningless now. Too little, too late. What about the other times? I pressed. My science project getting damaged? The food poisoning? Falling down the basement stairs? Michael's silence was answer enough. All of it. I asked, my voice breaking. Everything was you? He nodded miserably. I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just little things to slow you down. But nothing worked. You always bounce back stronger than before. I felt like I was falling all over again, but this time the pain was in my heart instead of my head. The brother I had loved and trusted had been systematically trying to destroy my life for months. Why didn't you just talk to me? I asked through tears. I would have tried to understand. I never wanted to make you feel bad. How could I tell you I hated your success? Michael said bitterly. How could I admit that every time you won something, I felt like I was losing? So instead you decided to hurt me? I'm sorry, he said, but the words sounded empty. I know it was wrong. I know I messed up. Sorry wasn't enough. Not after months of betrayal and lies. Not after he had put my life in danger to satisfy his jealousy. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything Michael had told me. His apology felt hollow because he was only sorry he got caught. If I hadn't found the evidence, he probably would have kept hurting me. I thought about telling our parents, but I realized that wouldn't be enough. Michael would face some punishment, sure. Maybe counseling or grounding. But then what? How could we ever be a normal family again? More importantly, how could I make sure he understood the real consequences of his actions? He needed to feel the same betrayal and helplessness that I had experienced. I wanted him to know what it felt like to have someone you trust completely turn against you. I wanted him to understand the fear of not knowing when the next attack might come. Simply telling on him wouldn't accomplish that. I needed something more creative. Something that would make him feel exactly what I had felt. As the hours ticked by, a plan began forming in my mind. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it might be the only way to make Michael truly understand what he had done to me. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The plan required patience and careful preparation. First, I needed to make Michael believe that I had forgiven him and wanted to move past everything. This was the hardest part because looking at him now made me feel sick with anger. I'm glad we talked, I told him the next day. I understand why you felt that way, and I forgive you. Michael looked relieved and guilty at the same time. Really? Just like that? We're family, I said, forcing the words out. That has to mean something. Over the next few weeks, I pretended that everything was back to normal between us. I asked for his help with homework. I invited him to watch movies with me. I even let him walk me to school again. But while I was acting like the trusting little sister, I was also gathering information. I learned Michael's schedule down to the minute. I discovered that he had been accepted into a special soccer camp for talented players, something he hadn't told anyone about yet because he wanted to surprise our parents. This camp was clearly very important to him. More important than anything else in his life right now. That's when I knew exactly how to make him pay for what he had done to me. The soccer camp applications were due in 2 weeks. Michael had been working on his application essay for months, writing and rewriting it until every word was perfect. He kept all his materials in a special folder on his desk. I waited until a Saturday when Michael was at a friend's house and our parents were grocery shopping. Then I went into his room and found the folder. His essay was actually quite good. He wrote about overcoming challenges and working as part of a team. He talked about leadership and dedication. Reading his words about being trustworthy and supportive of teammates made me feel nauseated. I took photos of all his application materials, then put everything back exactly as I had found it. Michael would never know I had been there. Next, I started documenting his daily routine. When he left for school, when he came home, where he went on weekends. I wrote everything down in my own notebook, creating the same kind of detailed observations he had made about me. Michael had no idea he was being watched and studied, just like I had been unaware of his surveillance. The irony felt perfect. Soon, it would be time to execute my plan. 3 days before the soccer camp application deadline, I put my plan into action. I had learned that Michael always went to the library after school on Wednesdays to work on important projects. He liked the quiet environment and the reliable internet connection. That Wednesday, I got to the library early and used one of the public computers to create a fake email account. Then I drafted a message to the soccer camp director, pretending to be a concerned teacher from our school. The email detailed several incidents of academic dishonesty and aggressive behavior toward younger students that Michael had allegedly committed. I included specific dates and descriptions that sounded believable but were completely fabricated. I made sure to mention that the school was currently investigating these issues and that they felt the camp should be aware of Michael's character before making their final decision. Then I sent the email and waited. I knew Michael would be devastated when the camp rejected his application. Soccer was his passion, his chance to prove himself without competing with my academic achievements. Losing this opportunity would hurt him more than any physical injury. The punishment fit the crime perfectly. He had sabotaged my opportunities, so I would sabotage his. Michael received the rejection letter on Friday afternoon. I was doing homework in the living room when he came home from school, and I heard him talking to Mom in the kitchen. "I don't understand," he was saying, his voice thick with confusion and hurt. "They said there were concerns about my character. What does that even mean?" Mom tried to comfort him, but Michael was devastated. He had worked so hard for this chance, and now it was gone for reasons he couldn't understand. I felt a moment of doubt watching him suffer. This was my brother, despite everything he had done. But then I remembered the pain of hitting that concrete sidewalk. I remembered the months of headaches and the fear I still felt sometimes when walking up those front steps. Michael had made his choice when he decided to hurt me. Now he was experiencing the consequences. "Maybe you can apply again next year," Mom suggested gently. "No," Michael said flatly. "They specifically said not to reapply. It's over." The finality in his voice told me that my revenge was complete. He would never know that I was responsible for his rejection, just like I had never suspected his role in my fall. But unlike him, I felt no satisfaction in causing pain. Weeks passed, and Michael grew quieter and more withdrawn. He stopped talking about his future plans and spent most of his time alone in his room. Sometimes I caught him staring at me with a puzzled expression, like he was trying to solve a difficult math problem. Our parents were worried about his sudden mood change, but they attributed it to normal teenage disappointment. They had no idea what was really happening in their house. I had achieved my goal. Michael was suffering just as I had suffered. He felt betrayed by circumstances beyond his control, just like I had felt betrayed by someone I trusted. The person he thought he could become was gone forever, just like my sense of safety had been destroyed. But victory felt hollow. We were both damaged now, both carrying secrets that poisoned our relationship. The family that had once been loving and close was broken, maybe beyond repair. As I write this story, months later, I still don't know if my revenge was worth it. Michael never discovered what I had done, but he also never faced real consequences for hurting me. We live in the same house like polite strangers, each of us pretending that everything is normal. Maybe someday we'll find a way to heal from what we've done to each other. Maybe we'll learn to trust again. Or maybe some wounds are too deep to ever fully close. I thought I fell until I saw my brother's face. Now I know that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we never see coming.